Welcome all and very good morning. And this is Girish, AVP Volunteer Development, working with Mr. Ketanji. We will start today's webinar in 5 minutes. Before that, let me take you through our agenda. PM forum will start in some time and will continue for an hour till logical break, which is set by the speaker. We will take up questions before the break and then have a break for 10 minutes. PM forum sessions will resume after the break. At the end of the session, we will have question answers for 15 minutes, followed by vote of thanks and certificate giving. As informed earlier, question answers will be taken before the break. So please type in questions in chat box. Please note, video details will be provided to all our participants through mail IDs as per attendees. Let me introduce our speaker for today, Mr. Naushad Rajani. Naushad Rajani is a cybersecurity professional with 20 years experience. Before that, he was managing IT infrastructure, implementation, and operations for 10 years. He has worked for Wipro, Bank of America, KPMG in various geographies. He is certified PMP, CISSP, Certified Information Systems Security Professionals, CCSP, Certified Cloud Security Professional, CISA, Certified Information Systems Auditor. Mr. Naushad is also a member of Governance and Policies Committee, Mumbai chapter, and from this April onwards, he has been elected as VP Finance. Without taking much time, let's start our session. Today, Naushadji will talk on the subject cybersecurity, social and national imperative. Over to Mr. Naushad.
Thanks, Girish. Hope I am audible.
Yeah, you are audible, sir.
Okay, so I'll share my presentation. So today's webinar is based on cybersecurity, a social and national imperative. Uh, as the digital transactions have increased, then there's a requirement to have some level of uh, trust in whom we deal with. So that is where the importance of cybersecurity comes into picture. In today's world, most of the infrastructure is connected, and the wars which will be fought, it will be more of a cyber war rather than physical war. Though we are witnessing currently the Russia-Ukraine war, but uh, this online war has been going on for quite some time, and it is increasing day by day. So hackers from uh, the countries hack against the infrastructure of the enemy country. So many nation state actors are there who attack the infrastructure. Especially in India, we are seeing it that many of the neighbors engage in cyber warfare and they keep attacking our infrastructure. So the importance of cyber security has been increasing day by day, and it's important that we as a project managers are aware of it, and we should be part of this basic understanding of cyber security in our projects. So let us see how cyber security has gained importance. So traditionally, the electronic data processing had a very limited data flow, wherein only the people within the organization, within the office, had access to the data. But with the advent of internet and hyper-connected networks, this data is flowing outside the office, outside uh, the city, outside the country, and across the world. Uh, it has helped the economy and business in general because we see a lot of business are enabled around this hyper-connected networks. Online transactions have increased leaps and bounds. So the convenience of online banking we have all seen, whether it is internet banking, whether it is fund transfer through NEFT, RTGS, IMPS, and now with this current UPI-based transactions, the payments has becoming more and more simpler. But it also poses a threat to the society because that element of trust is not there. We see day in and day out lot of frauds, online frauds taking place. People are losing money. Almost every alternate day, we hear the news of fraudulent transactions happening in someone's account, or there is an attack on the infrastructure network of any organization. So it has been making headlines with uh, regularly, and catching cyber criminals is also a challenge because the place of commitment of crime is at one place, the victim is another, and the attacker is in a third country. So it becomes difficult to track it, and especially to bring them to uh, under the ambit of some sort of a law, because laws are different in different countries, and the cooperation between the different countries may not be there. So, Girish, we can start with a poll. You can launch the first poll. Let us see the audience about their ability to transact online. How many of you all are using UPI based applications? So, the poll is uh, I use UPI based applications like PhonePe, GPay, or through the scanning of the QR code. So, shall we close the poll, Girish?
Okay, closing.
Yeah, so more than half, almost half of the people use UPI based application, and very few people are not using it, and about one third have not bothered to answer. Okay. So in general, most of us are using this UPI based applications. Now, this with the emergence of digital payment, the payment happens through virtual payment address, the VPA, to the Unified Payment Interface UPI handle, which is in the form of the name or a ID of the person at HDFC or ICICI Bank or Axis Bank or Baroda Pay. So what is the advantage of using this type of UPI handle? It obviates the need of providing the bank account number, IFC code, or name of the account, and then wait for half an hour cooling period before the transfer can take place. And especially to make payments to vendors, the roadside vendors, it becomes easier to scan the QR code and transfer the money. It of course reduces the ATM footprints. Uh, what has happened that over the years, the government has been pushing for digital transactions, so that there is not much cash in the economy for the various reasons. So it is for prevention of money laundering, prevention of tax evasions. So the ATMs in general are reducing day by day, and there is also an overhead of loading the ATMs with cash currency, carrying the cash currency, and then withdrawing the cash from the ATM, then giving it to the vendors. then again the vendor goes and deposits it in his account, and then the cash flow, uh, to limit this cash transactions, government has been pushing for digital payments like UPI. The QR code has further eased the digital payments. So scanning of the QR code and immediately, whether you are using GPay, PhonePe, Paytm, etc., immediately the funds can be transferred to the vendors, and then exact amount can be transferred. So there is no need for maintaining exact change and uh, problems related to exchanging the cash. But this has posed a major problem, challenges, and it has become one of the ways to attack the victim. Let us see one example of this. So you might have heard recently that there was a case of OLX where there was a person who was trying to sell the furniture, and he put up the ad on OLX, and there was a fraudster who called up and said that he is interested and he wants to transfer the money. So he said that I will send you a QR code. You scan the QR code, and I will transfer the money. You can request the money through that. So when the victim scanned the QR code, there was a pop-up on the mobile to download the application. When the application was downloaded, a malware was installed. Now let us see what type of malware it was. So if you see, when the victim scanned the QR code, this is a typically type of a control which the attacker has. So, for example, there is a this which says the SMS. So the SMS from the target session also gets replicated. So the victim receives the SMS, and the attacker also gets the SMS. So more or less, the attacker has taken control of the mobile, and it can see the contact. So there is a uh, provision to get the contact list. So the application, after scanning the QR code, there was a uh, there was a prompt to download a particular application, and once that application was downloaded, the control of the mobile was in the hands of the attacker. So he could get the contact list, he could get the SMS, he could get the geolocation of the mobile. Uh, in general, whatever information, confidential information was required to transact was in the hands of the attacker. Okay. This happens especially in Android device, uh, and the tool which was used was a Kali Linux. Now, what is Kali Linux? Kali Linux is a operating system. Just like you have Red Hat Linux, you have SUSE Linux, you have Debian Linux. There is a version of Linux, there is a flavor of Linux which is used to launch attacks. So Kali Linux is one of the Linux version which is used by the attacker, and Metasploit is a framework, the attacker framework, uh, which is used to create such malicious programs. Along with this, there was a social engineering toolkits. All these are open source tools which anyone can download and install it. So what happens is basically the mobile is in the control of the attacker, and any transaction initiated through the phone is as good as it is being done by the attacker. So any questions? If there are any no questions, I can proceed further and have another polling questions. So we have heard about security. Now, security, does it affect customer experience? So maybe you all can answer whether it affects it or it doesn't affect. because security measures could be seen as cumbersome. So, Girish, we can close the poll and see the results. Yeah, so security is seen and it affects the customer experience. So around 50% of the people say that, and many of people are not answering. So, and very few people say that these are not related. It's a very interesting because security is seen that it is causing inconvenience. So generally people choose convenience over security. And that's where the problem happens. So in the previous case, which I discussed, if the person who had scanned the QR code and there was a malicious code within the QR code which prompted the user to download the application. So had the victim been taken some pains to understand why there is a need to download the application, then it would not have happened. So this is some sort of exploiting the human weakness of having convenience or being in haste or hurry to complete the transactions. Especially certain sections of the society, like senior citizens, don't have that level of digital awareness, and they fall prey to this type of a game of attackers who install this malicious code. Uh, it's generally a human weakness and human vulnerability. So there is a question. Let me see. What is the question? Girish,
Is
you
there a
can.
way that users can authenticate that requests received are from legitimate sources?
Actually, see, because in this cyber world, we should take it a point to transact only with people with whom you have some level of trust. So when you buy something from your roadside vendor, you have some element of trust that he's selling vegetables or he's selling fruits, or there is a small shop who's selling some goods. And then when they ask you to scan the QR code, then it is okay. But from the stranger who's totally unrelated and you're trying to sell something online or trying to buy something online, one should be wary of what type of person that other side of the uh, line would be, other side who's with whom you are dealing, whether he or she can be trusted or not. So one should be always be suspicious of scanning the QR codes sent by unknown people. So QR code could contain malicious code, and one should be aware of it. So unless you have some level of trust, one should not scan the QR code. So let us go to the corporate world. This is a story of Bank of Bangladesh. Way back in February 2016, hacker breached the Bank of Bangladesh SWIFT system. Now, SWIFT system is what? It is the wire transfer system to transfer the funds from one uh, part of the world to another part of the world. So this SWIFT system has been set up internationally. You might have heard that today's news that Russia has been expelled from the SWIFT system. So the telegraphic transfer which takes place cannot happen. In previously, what used to happen, there used to be huge telegram. We used to type the wire transfer instructions. So All this wire transfer instruction used to happen through this telegraphic machines. But nowadays, everything has gone on the online. So in February 2016, there was a attempt made to transfer $1 billion, which was the entire Federal Reserve, whatever was the foreign exchange of Bank of Bangladesh. There was an instruction to transfer it to various accounts. So the the bank, the dollars which were maintained in the Federal Reserve in USA, they received an instruction to transfer $1 billion. The damage was limited to $81 million because the hacker didn't took the pains to properly format it. Means the beneficiary's name was misspelled, and that's how it was just stopped in time. Uh, so what happens is just like in previously there used to be telegraphic machines. Nowadays the instructions are printed out and it is sent to the printers. But the printers also were disabled. So let us see this how it happened. I'll play a video. Just a minute, how do I play? Can you all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'll play this video. You all can hear it, right?
Yes.
Girish, it is
No,
audible?
video we are not able to see and hear. We are able to hear your voice.
Okay, just a minute.
Or shall I play from my side, from my end?
Yeah, yeah. Just Girish, try that.
Hmm. Are you able to see?
No, we cannot see. Shall I try from my end?
No, yeah, yeah, please. But I'm not able to.
Can be seen, right? Hello? Is it visible?
Yeah, yeah, it is visible.
And the sound can also be heard, right?
Yes, yes. Voice and picture both are visible.
So that was about how Bank of Bangladesh was very lax in implementing security controls. So, like implementing the malware, patching the systems, or using multi-factor authentication, or limiting the admin level access on the end user computers or the laptops. All this were part of the basic hygiene which they should have taken care of. So let us try to understand the security principles, what they are, the basics of it. So first is confidentiality, that is protection of information from unauthorized disclosure. So that is confidentiality. Integrity is protecting the information from unauthorized modifications. So integrity is that. Availability is system should be available when as and when required. So this is also one of the security principles. So security should not be in such a way that the user experience or the customer experience suffers. So availability uh, could be contradictory to say confidentiality. For example, you have encryption. Now, encryption causes a lot of overheads. The system tends to slow down and people get frustrated. So, in the measure, it is to implement stiff security, the availability, the user experience should not suffer. So, this is also one of the principles of security. Okay. And fourth one is authentication. So any access to the system, any access to the transaction should be properly authenticated. And the last one is non-repudiation. So what is non-repudiation? So whatever transactions has happened, the person who initiated the transaction cannot say no, cannot later on repudiate it, that he or she never did this transaction. So that is about non-repudiation. For example, digital signatures, which we are used, it is some sort of a control in place to ensure that one who is, say, filing the income tax return is the one who claims to be. So by putting the digital signature, that assurance is there. Otherwise, if you are not using digital signatures, you have to take out the printout and send it to the central processing unit of income tax. So this is where non-repudiation comes into picture. So let us study what are the common types of attacks. So phishing is the most common type of attack. It uses the human weakness to exploit a particular situation. So by sending an email, by uh, instilling a fear inside the person that your account would be locked in case if you don't put in the username and password, or your credit card could be blocked. So instilling that fear, or putting some sort of a greed that you have won uh, about 100,000 rupees, uh, and you are requested to uh, provide further information. So you provide further information, and that is how the phishing attack takes place. It may install a malware into your system, and that malware could be detrimental to your security. So what is ransomware? Ransomware is based on the premise. A person may say that my data is not important. So it may not be important to the hacker, but it is important to you. So the playing on this mentality, hackers install a malware which will encrypt the hard disk. So you yourself are not able to access your data. So then they demand a ransom that they will provide a key to decrypt it if you uh, if you transfer a particular bitcoins in their account. So that is how the ransomware works. It's quite prevalent, especially for systems which have not been patched, or systems where malware, anti-malware software, antivirus software is not there. Anti-virus software, anti-malware software is not there. Anti-virus software, anti-malware software is not there. 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 Anti-virus software is not there. So this is where Another is keyloggers. So keyloggers are nothing but whatever you type in, the same your keystrokes are transferred to the attacker, and he can see what you have typed in along with the screen where you, at which screen you are typing which keys. So this is the basic way how the keyloggers work, and that is again through remote access trojans. So there is a malware, like just like we saw in the QR code case, there was a QR code which was down, malicious code which was downloaded, and it remotely the attacker control the mobile. So similarly, keyloggers install a malware into your system, and that's how they control your system. Denial of service attack. Denial of service attacks are, suppose a attacker, a hacker initiates the attack and it initiates the traffic. So instead of using the three-way handshake in the TCP/IP, if you see how the handshake happens, so there is a TCP/I request which is sent, and then it is acknowledged by the servers, and again the end user system sends a, TCP ACK. So there is a three-way handshake which happens. So when this handshake is not finished, there are zombies which are planted, which will initiate the request, but they will not acknowledge it. So the buffer of the server keeps open those transactions, keeps open this request, and it occupies the memory and it overwhelms the server, and ultimately the server comes down. So this is denial of service. DDoS is distributed denial of service, where there are various zombies which are planted which across a set of computers, which will initiate the transactions, initiate the request on the server, and it will occupy the server's memory, and that's how the server hangs and it comes down. So this is distributed denial of service. SQL injections are parameters which are passed through the browser, and the browser, when it works like a operating system, and it sends a query to the database, and if it is not well formed query, the database table itself will be thrown, it will be thrown up, and it will be shown on the browser, and the whatever information, whatever records are there in the database, uh, that will be visible to the hacker, and he can change it, he can alter the table. So let us see how the phishing mails work. So if you can see, there is a mail which purportedly seems to have come from American Express Bank, but if you see the domain, it is a Pentagon Security ID, blah blah blah. So if you see it, it looks like very authentic, and it says that the account information, your account will be suspended if you do not click here and review the account. So when you try to click it, when you try to hover the mouse over here, you will come to know that actually it is a malicious URL and is not the actual URL of uh, American Express Bank. It is a malicious URL. So that's how phishing mails work. It it exploits the weakness of human by instilling some sort of a fear or a threat into the user. Similarly, if you see over here, the URL which is shown of Amazon.com, so there is a typo, there is an additional N which has been planted over there, and it redirects the user, and the user puts in the username and password, and it goes to the fraudster, and he gains access to the account. This is how the phishing website works. So let us see how overall internet is organized. Now, internet is a huge ocean, and what we see is only the surface which we see. So the sites which we visit, those are easily accessible either through search engines or through URL. So all this which we see is just 30-40% of the internet. And there is much more deeper network of internet. So beyond surface web, there is something known as deep web. So deep web is password protected. For example, the internet banking. So unless the one puts in the username and password, one cannot access it. Or if certain research papers or private forums where you need to have username and password. So it is password protected and it is accessible only to limited set of people. So that is deep web. And what is dark web? Dark web is something which cannot be accessed through the normal browsers. Okay. So for that, you have to download special browsers. So one such browser is a Tor browser. So if you have to access deep web, you have to download this Tor browser and then you have to use other search engines. So our normal Google and Bing and all these search engines will not work. For this, there are other search engines like DuckDuckGo, where you have to put in your queries in those type of search engines. The hidden wiki is another search engine, which is used at dark web. So this is where you enter into a dark web, and it's an entire different world. The Tor browser stands for the Onion Ring, TOR, the Onion Ring browser. It's a browser specially meant to anonymously surf the dark web. So it's a huge world over there where a lot of information like credit card data, the passwords, uh, and you name it, the various hacking tools, all these are available in dark web. So let's launch another poll. It's normally many people have this doubt. What is the difference between information security and cyber security? So whether it is same or cyber security is a subset of information security, or these two are distinct, but there is a big overlap between cyber security and information security. So we will close the poll in another 10 seconds. Girish? Yeah, so let us see the result. So again, about 45% of people say the two are distinct, but there is a big overlap between cyber security and information security, correct? So let us see how it maps. Now, if you see, there is an overlap as far as digital information is concerned, which comes under the ambit of both information security and cybersecurity. Information security deals with also other types of information. So it could be paper-based information, it could be your phone conversation information, which works on GSM. So all those comes under information security. While cyber security is more related to networks. So uh, one has to protect the networks for cyber security because all the information happens through networks. So cyber security focuses on protecting the networks. So digital information, which is in the middle small circle, is a overlap between information security and cyber security. So we are all into this project management. So there are various project-based uh, implementation of security. One is our ISO 27001 information security standards. So for that, there are 14 domains are there with more than 130 controls which needs to be implemented. Part one is a requirement and it is auditable standard against which the organization is assessed and auditors decide whether the organization is fit for recommendation for certification. Part two is more of code of practice, how this standard has to be implemented. This is for information security. Similarly, for cyber security, the NIST, the National Institute of Standards and Technology of the United States, is a de facto standard which is used for implementing cybersecurity. It has 5 core functions and 23 unique categories. So let us see how the domains of ISO 27000 work. So basically, the inside circle is a damming circle of doing plan, do, check, act. So this is an iterative circle. As a part of continual improvement, you continuously do the planning and then you do the implementation. And once you do the implementation, you monitor it by checking it, and then you act on in case of any gaps are there, you try to fulfill those gaps and then again go back to this PDCA cycle. The outer circle is where the implementation of ISO 27000 domain is to be done. So first is asset management. Asset management is you take all your assets, whether it is in physical forms or logical forms, whether it is software, services, the APIs, all that comes under asset management. So you have to have uh, all the assets defined which you are planning to protect it. And then you find out what is the criticality of these assets. What are the risks which are there to these assets? What are the threats, the external threats and the internal threats which are there to the asset? And then what are the vulnerabilities? So what are the weakness? So whether the weakness of human being, the weakness of uh, the configurations or the weakness of IT assets that is performed by under this asset management. Then second is asset control. Actually, it should be access control. So access control is nothing but it's the way the various actors will be accessing the assets. So whether it will be through username, password, or whether it will be through multi-factor authentication or Google Authenticator, Microsoft Authenticator. So that comes under access control. Another is human resource security. So there should be some sort of a background check especially for people which occupy a very sensitive position like administrators, system administrators, network administrators, database administrators. So all these are privileged administrators. They have access to privileged accounts and they can bring down the systems. Another is organization of information system. So organization of information system is the structure, the management structure which is there in place. So you have a Office of Chief Information Security Officer, CISO, under which various security analysts and governance uh, executives are there. Uh, this function is separate from your IT function. So IT function does more of implementation and the monitoring and what are the policies, procedures which needs to be implemented is a separate function to ensure segregation. So the one who does the implementation cannot do the monitoring. So that's where the segregation is important. So that's how the information security organization uh, is happens to be there. So CISO should not be reporting to CIO ideally because it could lead to conflict of interest. So the office of implementer cannot also be taking feedback from those who do the monitoring. Information security policies are basic type of uh, policies and procedures which governs the information security framework to ensure that those all the actors abide by the information security policies. Compliance. So all organizations work in some sort of a regulatory environment, especially the banks and the um, stock exchange players or telecom players. They have to comply with their respective regulators. So be it RBI, SEBI, or TRAI. So that compliance framework is also part of information security planning. One has to be take cognizance of the compliance environment within which the organization is working. Then, in case of any attack, in case the primary site is not available, for example, there is a ransomware attack on the primary site, then what is the way to resume the operations from alternate site? So that is the information security aspect of business continuity. So it has to ensure that security also is applied at the DR site. Information security incident management. So this is where any attacks which take place or any breach, even if the attack is not successful, any attempt to attack or any breach of policies, it has to be investigated and it needs to be analyzed, investigated, and some sort of analysis needs to be performed, root cause analysis as to what was the reason for this incident. Supplier relationship management. So because of lot of outsourcing taking place, a lot of suppliers happen to supply, provide services or provide IT infrastructure to the organization. So especially if service providers, they take access remotely to provide the services. So it should not happen that in the process of providing the remote support, the malware from their end gets into the organization. So supply chain security is also important. System acquisition and development and maintenance. So this is whatever applications which are being developed, the security has to be built up from ground zero. So whatever are the security scenarios that should be envisaged right at the design stage. So it is easier to build the security from ground zero rather than to retrofitting security once the application has been built. So that is related to system acquisition and development and maintenance. Communication security ensures that whatever communication takes place, whether it has the desired level of encryptions, whether the network is segmented based on logical grouping. The virtual LANs are planned in such a way that there is enough segregation, enough separation between, for example, the card holder, the credit card data related information and non-credit card related information. So those type of segregation is there. Operation security. So any systems which are built, for example, the servers which are there, which are deployed, they are hardened. Uh, they are configured in such a way that unnecessary services are not there. So especially like web servers, which are internet facing, they are they are configured in such a way that the services which are not required are disabled, or the ports which are not required, those are needs to be closed. Physical and environmental security is where the server is housed in a data center, whether it has the various controls related to physical security or the level of humidity, air condition, and there are uh, no hot pockets. So whatever hot air which comes out from the racks, that is sucked out, and the temperature is maintained optimally within the data center. Cryptographic controls are the encryptions which are there, the various encryptions. So as the compute power increases, the older versions of the uh, encryptions are becoming weaker. So for example, data encryption standard DES, which was there, that became weaker as the compute increased. So then triple DES was the next encryption algorithm. Now that has also is considered weak, and now we have advanced encryption standards. So this is about the various domains of ISO 27001. So if there are any questions, we can take it up. Girish?
So far, no questions.
Okay.
Sir, can we take a break or shall we wait for some time?
Yeah, we can take a break. So break will be for how long, Girish?
It will be for 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, no problem. So it is now 10:55. So we will reassemble at what time? 11,
Around 11:05.
11:05. Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you.
So we will take a small break of 10 minutes. So we will be back at 11:05. Thank you. Welcome all. After a small break, PDU details will be provided to all participants through email ID as per attendance. I'll be sharing the feedback link in the chat box. Request all participants to provide their feedback so that we can incorporate changes in our coming session. Participants can type your questions in chat box. Questions will be answered at the end of the session. Mr. Noshad, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Girish.
Making a presenter.
Yeah, yeah. So we studied this ISO 27001 framework. Now this National Institute of Standards on Technology list of United States, the cybersecurity framework we'll try to understand in this slide. So basically, uh, it has 5 functions. First is identify, then protect, detect, respond, and recover. So what is identify? So identify is identifying what your IT assets are, the hardware, the software, the virtual machines, the your assets in the cloud, the APIs, the APIs which the organization consumes, or the APIs which are published. Uh, the API has become more and more important because nowadays most of the organizations the connectivity is through APIs. So one should also have the inventory of application programming interface APIs. Then one should also understand the business context, the industry in which the organization uh, functions, like whether it is a banking industry, whether it is an insurance industry, uh, whether it is a telecom industry, retail industry. So one has to identify the context. As we discussed in ISO 27001, similarly in NIST, there is a risk identification where you identify the risks which are there based on the threat and vulnerability assessment. Second is to have the protect. So the implementation of various technologies. So implementing firewall or segmenting the network, uh, creating the people awareness so that the people are empowered to know any malicious mail. They should be able to spot any malicious URL. So all this happens through people's training and awareness. Access control through multi-factor authentication. So access through OTP or Google Authenticator or Microsoft Authenticator. Detect detection through vulnerability assessment. So you have vulnerability scanners which scan the network and sees what are the server vulnerabilities, the network vulnerabilities. All those are thrown up in a form of a report, and then the team has to close the whatever the open points are there, whatever vulnerabilities, especially high and medium risk vulnerabilities, have to be closed. Then setting up of a security operations center, the SOC center, which detects any anomalous behavior. So there is a dedicated SOC. So even if you have most of your infrastructure in the cloud, there's a requirement to set up a SOC. So your SOC could be outsourced to any of the security service providers to detect any anomalous behavior of the network or of the system so that any attacks are detected in a timely manner. Respond. So, as it is said that organizations will be breached. So, question is not whether it will be breached or not. Question is when it will be breached. So, one should be prepared that in case of any breach happens, as and when it happens, how the response will be there. The incident response can be in form of disconnecting the servers which are attacked to limit the attack so there is no further lateral movement of the attacker. Communication with the higher management. So The management should also be kept in loop of what is happening. As and when the attack happens, the management should be aware of it, and it may require to report to the regulators, because nowadays all the regulators, especially RBI, requires that any breaches which are happens, the regulators should be informed in a timely manner. Either it is 24 or 48 hours. Then the forensics investigation, the system which is breached has to be investigated. If the breach is very severe, in that case, some forensics investigation would be required, wherein the traces of the attacker are intact. So, whatever the servers are there, they need to be removed. They have to be kept for if any further investigation or uh, complaints to the law enforcement agency, and the case has to be taken up in the court of law. Recovery. So recovery, as we saw in case of ransomware, that in case if the primary site, the hard disks are encrypted and they are not accessible, there should be a failover mechanism to the DR site, disaster recovery site, and restoration of the backup. So backup is an important aspect of this entire recovery. So there should be timely backup of whatever data is there. So that needs to be restored at the time after the attack takes place, in case if the it is a ransomware type of attack. So what are the opportunities for we as a project managers? There are various projects which requires security and compliance to regulatory framework. So like setting up of a security operation centers. So security operation centers, how they function, so there are logs which are there. So whatever is being done on the system, there is a log of it, and that logs are shipped to a centralized location in the logger, and there is a security tools, SIEM tool, the security information and event management tool, which will correlate the event. For example, when the attacker pass through the perimeter router, the firewall, at what time the attacker entered into a particular system, how the lateral movement of the attacker took place, at what time, all these events are correlated and it is shown as alerts on the Security Operations Center console. So there are security operators and analysts which are there who are doing the continuous analysis of any malware. It also has to be integrated with the threat intelligence feed. So there are threat intelligence providers like the CERT has its own advisories in form of automated system which feeds into the SIEM tool. Or there are other players like Palo Alto is there, or Recorded Future is there. So various threat intelligence feeds are available, which comes into this SIM tool, and the security analysts are able to find out whether the systems have been breached or not, whether in what type of activities which are taking place. So it could be some sort of a as simple as a reconnaissance. So reconnaissance is what the attacker will come and check what are the open ports on your network. So it will scan your network just to see the reconnaissance, to see what is the path to get entry. So it could be that. So was it just as simple as reconnaissance, or it could be that certain malware is getting into it. So it could be your ports, which are well-known ports like web service port like 8080, or uh, any other well-known ports with the traffic is allowed. So is the malware coming through that? The attacker is coming through that, and the intrusion prevention system is able to detect it or not. Once the attacker comes and breaches a system, what type of files are being changed, or any changes, unauthorized changes which are taking place, any uh, escalation of privileges. So the attacker may be having certain credentials, and he tries from a normal user to a admin level privilege. So all those type of events, as and when it take place, those are being monitored in the Security Operations Center. It is also integrated with vulnerability management tools, wherein the vulnerability scanners scan the system for vulnerabilities, and it requires that certain patches, if it is required, they need to be implemented by the IT team. So this was related to Security Operations Center. Now, PCI DSS is one of the opportunities, like where the projects uh, there is opportunity for project managers to do some implementation. So PCI DSS mandates some 12 controls which needs to be implemented, and those who are qualified security assessors, PCA, sorry, QSA, those are the accredited uh, assessors who assess whether the organization complies with the Data Security Council norms. Now, this various card schemes, whether it is MasterCard, Visa, Discover, all these have set up this Data Security Council, which promulgates, which issues the standards, and the organizations have to comply with it. So there is a push from the regulators, there is a push from the industry, and also the card schemes push the organizations to have this compliance into place. So this is another project, the PCI DSS projects. Then RBI is very strict as far as the security is concerned. So they require their cybersecurity framework, which is issued by the bank, issued by the regulator by RBI, that needs to be implemented, and it is a project by itself to implement. Because as and when the auditors from RBI, the IT arm of RBI, which is known as RABIT, RBI IT, the auditors come regularly and they are quite strict and they oversee what is the performance of this security framework according to their circular. Similarly, for insurance company, IRDAI, the Insurance Regulatory Development Authority of India, based in Hyderabad, has come out with its guidelines to comply with it. The National Critical Information Infrastructure Protection Center, NCIIPC, though it is bit in infancy, but that is also picking up because many of the power power plants, the distribution companies, uh, have to comply with security norms because besides the IT network, the hackers are also attacking the power network, the energy networks, the water supply networks, which is moving into the TCP/IP. So TCP/IP is becoming more and more prevalent. The IP is becoming more and prevalent, and the legacy protocols are slowly being replaced by TCP/IP. SEBI also has a projects related to complying with the SEBI norms. So market institution infrastructure is the entire uh, economy of the stock exchanges, the stockbrokers, the depository participants. All this form some sort of a economy for SEBI. SEBI circulars have to comply with it. So this is related to SEBI compliance of for their circulars. So SEBI inspection also takes place. SEBI is also gaining importance over a period of time, and they see that all the stock exchanges, the brokers, the depository participants comply with their circulars. And the IT Act, of course, has various privacy and security uh, related clauses which organizations have to comply with. So
One
as I spoke
question.
with, hello,
Sir, there is one question. Will there
hmm.
be any impact of GDPR on data security?
Yeah, actually GDPR is there in Europe, but for Indian companies which supply goods or services to European Union, they have to comply with GDPR. So GDPR also has a lot of implications, especially for like banks which have NRIs who are residents of EU, so they have to comply with GDPR. Many of the BPOs which get information related to their customer of European Union, they have to comply with the GDPR. So that is also a very elaborate law which requires compliance. So India's own data protection bill, the personal data protection bill, which was drafted by Sri Krishna Commission way back in 2018, that has gone through the various consultation process uh, to the Joint Parliamentary Committee, but ultimately I think it has been scrapped. The government has scrapped it and going to start afresh the data protection bill exercise. So again, the bill will be drafted and then again it will be presented into the parliament. So as far as card schemes are concerned, uh, the various cards like MasterCard or Visa card, they have a particular nomenclature, the particular method to allocate the numbers. So the first digit indicates who is the issuer. So if it is starts with 4, then Visa is the issuer. In India, there is not much of MX and Diners cards, so they start with 3. MasterCard starts with 5, and RuPay card starts with 6. And Discover card, of course, again is not in India, so that also starts with 6. So first digit is the card scheme number. The next 6 digit is the bank number, the issuing bank, the one who issues the card, that number is there. And next 8 digit is the account number of the customer. And the last digit is the check digit. Okay, so this is how the numbering happens. Now, when you come to the type of payment scheme, uh, there is something known as the account number. So, account number is the entire 16-digit number is the account number. So, that is primary account number or known as PAN. So, this is different than the permanent account number issued by the Income Tax Department. So, this is also known as PAN or the primary account number. Then you have a magnetic strip. Now this magnetic strip has been done away with. It is obsolete and no one is using it. So as per the RBI, no card can be issued without a chip. So this chip has become essential after the Cosmos Bank breach of the cards. So now all banks have to have this chip. So this magnetic card based magnetic stripe based cards are no more in use. And there is something known as CVV number, which is the 3 digit number, which is known as sensitive authentication data or SAD. So how does the payment card process work? So there is a card holder who may present the card to the merchant retailer. So it could be in physical world as in the POS, the point of sale system. When we visit Future Bazaar or DMart, we put it on the card on the POS. Okay, it is swiped on the POS, and then the merchant, the acquirer gets the card number. So the transaction data, it flows from after you put it on the POS, it goes to the acquirer. The POS machine, the manufacturer of that POS machine acquires that transaction. And that transaction then again is routed to the card scheme, that is a MasterCard or Visa card. And then it hits the card issuer. So if your card is issued by HDFC Bank and you are swiping it on the point of sale of ICICI Bank, then ICICI Bank becomes the acquirer and HDFC becomes the issuer. So once the card hits the issuer will see whether you have the limit or not, and based on that, it will approve the transaction, and it goes back to the card scheme and to the acquirer, and then uh, it is routed back to the point of sale, and that particular check is printed out on the point of sale system, and that is given to the card holder once the transaction is complete. So this is how the transaction flows. So the important aspect is the card issuer and the card acquirer, the one who acquires the transaction. So similarly, in e-commerce, it happens that way, wherein online you put in the card, which is known as card not present, because physically the card is with you, you are putting only the number. So it is card not present type of a transaction, where it goes to the acquirer, the online acquirer, whether it is Razorpay or Just Pay, who acquires the transaction. Then they send the transaction to the card scheme, the centralized, the one who has the card scheme, whether it is starts with 4, 5, or 6, it goes to the card scheme server and then to the card issuer. So there's a difference between card present, where it is presented on the point of sale, and card not present, which is to the e-commerce, where actually the card is not available at the site. It is through the virtual world you are placing the order. So let us study this case.
So we
So
have one
in
question.
yeah,
How to ascertain the right security frameworks are identified and implemented in project to protect against security threats and mitigate risk?
so generally organizations adopt this NIST framework, NIST framework for cybersecurity, or it depends on the which particular sector the company is operating. So if it is a bank, it will be the RBI cybersecurity framework. So if it is a bank, it will be RBI security framework. Bank also has to be compliant with this PCI DSS, Payment Card Data Security Standard. So it's a framework, elaborate framework, which which articulates the various control which needs to be implemented. Uh, Most of the organization go in for either NIST, which is a very comprehensive framework for cybersecurity, and if they have to go for a certification, then they go for ISO 27001. So ISO 27001 is more of a process-based framework, while NIST is more of technology-based. So here, ISO 27000 stresses on policies, procedures, and maintenance of records, while NIST is meant to do some sort of a building the strong technology solution, strong technology framework to implement cybersecurity. So as I was mentioning about this Cosmos Bank, so about 13.5 million was stolen from Cosmos Bank. It is a bank based in Pune, and it was a quite well-known bank. 2,800 rupee and 12,000 international visa transactions through clone cards. The magnetic strip card, which I mentioned, happened over a period of time, and huge sum was stolen from the bank. So how it happened? uh, ATMs, whatever transactions happens at the ATM, it hits the payment switch at the bank, and the payment switch in turn is integrated with the core banking solution to see the limits which are there for that particular card. So as I will show over here in this, So there is a payment switch. So all the point of sale. So this is a point of sale. It will go to the payment switch of Cosmos Bank. Similarly, uh, various card processors, their transactions will be routed through the payment switch, which is placed at the bank, and then it will hit the core banking infrastructure, where this or this Finacle or banks or other core banking solutions are there. There it will see, hit it, and check whether the card has that type of limit or not. So there is a transaction request which is sent out by the payment switch to the core banking solution, and then there's a transaction reply which comes back. So what had happened is this: the hackers had set up their own payment switch, which is nothing but a software, a piece of software. So rather than sending the traffic of the ATM to this payment switch software within the bank, they set up another software within the bank that was a rogue payment switch, and it never spoke with the core banking infrastructure. So this link which was there, this was severed, and that's how the authentication never took place, and the lot of money was lost. So access to ATM payment switch to set up they set up their own proxy switch and injected the malware, and there was no transaction request and transaction reply from the core banking solution. It was a fake request and reply which was forged, and it was sent to the ATM. So ATM kept on giving the money. So that's why the bank, it was the cards which were not issued to the customers. It was just the number which was generated, and from the number which was generated, the hackers printed the card, they cloned the card, and started withdrawing money from ATM. So that's where this chip-based cards came into force, and that's where RBI was very stringent in having chip-based cards. Similarly, there are various other data breaches which has taken place. So if you are aware of JustPay, JustPay is a company. So if you are placing order on Zomato, so Zomato, when you put in the card number, and it directs the traffic to JustPay, which processes the transaction. So JustPay is a transaction processor or the acquirer, and the cardholders, 10 crore cardholders' data was breached. So it was not the entire card data, it was the mass data which went over there. So they had access. So mass data is the PCI DSS scheme allows the first 6 digit and the last 4 digits to be visible. Okay. So it is 10-digit number, 16-digit number. So first six and last four, so that 10 digits are there, can be visible. The rest 6 digits should not be visible. So the attackers who got access to JustPay servers, they were able to access this 6 digit numbers along with the expiry card and the name and phone numbers and email addresses of the card holder were breached. And this, though the entire 16 digit is not available, but based on this, whatever information is available, the attackers can launch phishing attack, and they could send out mails to the users, to the victims, to have some sort of a believability, some sort of a credibility that, okay, I know your name, I know your phone number, I know your 16 this six sorry the mask number, the first six and the last 4 digits, I know about it. So the victim will feel that it has come from a genuine sender of the mail, and the victim will try to uh, easily give out the credentials, because that some level of trust has been established by the hackers. When the person receives a mail which is personalized along with the name, the phone number, and the first six and the last four digits of the credit card, the believability and the trust of the person increases. And that's how more information the victim will part with. So that's how it is used to launch attack. So what are the common issues which we observe in this PCI DSS compliance is that organizations normally do not have this type of segmentation of VLAN. So cardholder data needs to be segregated from non-cardholder. Encryption of data, encryption of the database is not there because organization generally see that it causes performance issues. Say don't encrypt the databases. So mask data and hash data is stored in the same table. So what is hash data? There is some sort of a checksum which is a unique number. When you hash the credit card information, then there is a checksum which is issued, and uh, that is uh, that is stored by the organization. So mass data and stored data is stored in the same database table, and it can be used for rainbow attacks. So what are rainbow attacks? So attackers have their own set of tools. So this is the checksum for this would be the checksum for this digits. This would be the checksum for this digit. So if you have know the checksum, you can know what is the credit card number. So that is some sort of a rainbow table which is built up by the hackers, and it is available in public domain in the dark web where anybody can buy this rainbow tables. Storage of sensitive authentication. The CVV data which is there, though it is not required, still organizations have been found to capture it and store it. Actually, it should not be stored even in encrypted form. So many of the banks, when there is a card dispute, they send a form to the person to fill in. So the person fills in the entire 16 digits. So one should take care not to fill in the entire 16 digit. One should maximum give the first six digit and the last four digits. Many of the hashing algorithms which are there, which are not in use, the older versions are being used. So MD5 hash or SHA hash, secure hashing algorithm, which was uh, which has become weak over a period of time, was still being used. So it happens that the partner network may not support it. For example, the point of sale system which acquires the transaction, it may not support this hashing algorithm. So that becomes one of the vectors of attack, and that's what the attackers are using it. Patching. So patching generally what happens is the organization, because the inoperability of the application, once the patches are applied, some application may not work. So in that case, organizations have been very lax in implementing the patches because the application stops working, so the vendor may not support the new patches. Or the vendor who had supplied the application has gone out of business, or it has been acquired by some other company, so that support level may not be available. So let us see this PNB case, how interesting it was, the Nirav Modi's case. Uh, so malicious account holders approaches the bank to provide loan to fund the opening of a diamond showrooms. So the branch doesn't ask for any margin money. So there is a letter of understanding, which undertaking, which has to be given by the bank to the foreign banks that after 30 days, after 60 days, after 90 days, after 180 days, they will pay. So it is a bank to bank trust. So the international bank, which was there in UK, gave the money to Nirav Modi, and based on the LOU, letter of understanding, which was sent out by the uh, Foreign Exchange Department of PNB, and based on that, the money was given to uh, Nirav Modi Group, and on later on the due date after 90 days or 180 days, when the bank was asked, the foreign bank asked the money from PNB, PNB was unable to recover the money because there was no collateral or no margin money provided by Nirav Modi Group. So what was the reason for that? Because this foreign exchange department of the bank was working in silos. So there was no integration of core banking solution transaction system with the foreign exchange department. So the limit of the customer was not known. So that's how uh, making exploiting this gap, the fraudulent bank account holders try to get money and try to defraud the banks by bribing small set of bankers within the bank. So had this integration would have been there, it would not have been possible for uh, PNB to face this type of a loss. So similarly, Colonial Pipeline is a pipeline which supplies gas to east coast of United States. So in this also, if you see, the employee was using the same password which have been compromised. So the passwords which are available in the dark web was being used. There was no multi-factor authentication, and ransomware was planted on IT network. Uh, Luckily, it did not go to the OT network, operational network. So operational network is a network where this uh, water, power, gas pipelines, those are enabled through operational technologies or industrial control systems. So those pipelines which were there, uh, those also could have been attacked. But as a precautionary measure, it was limited only to the corporate network of Colonial Pipeline. And the servers of this Colonial Pipeline, which were used for billing purpose, those were encrypted, and just in time, the OT network was isolated. The industrial control system on which the pipeline was working, that was isolated. In fact, uh, the owner, the management of the company parted with 4.5 million in Bitcoin to get the keys to decrypt the hard disk. Part of it was recovered back from the hackers. So when we talk about industrial control system, these are working on a legacy protocols, and uh, they this legacy protocols lack the authentication and encryption schemes and are prone to attacks. Slowly, as I mentioned, TCP/IP is being adopted, and it is being integrated with the corporate networks. But there are certain pitfalls in this. One has to take due care to segregate these industrial control systems from the corporate networks. So you have the IT network, which is there, and then there is an industrial control system, ICS network. Now, the one which is shown on the left side, the yellow, it is a TCP/IP enabled. So care should be taken that uh, these two networks are segregated, and there is some sort of a data diode. So there is only one way flow of data from OT to IT, and not from IT to OT. So any malware affecting the IT should not get into the OT network, because the industrial control systems are much more dangerous. It could cause issues related to human safety. For example, in Israel, the water plant, the potable water plant, the chlorine, they used to put some chlorine to have some level of purification. Now, chlorine should be in a optimal level. It should not be more, it should not be less. Now, this water treatment plant was hacked, and just the securities team found out just in time that the more chlorine was getting injected into the water, and they were able to isolate the system. So, had more chlorine been pumped into the water, it would have caused human life loss. So, the repercussions malware or attack on industrial control system is much larger, as it could cause physical damage, or it could cause human safety issues. It could cause loss of life. So I hope I'm clear that segregation of OT and IT network is essential.
Actually, little more difference, elaboration is required. The difference between OT and IT network.
So, well, consider a electricity company like Adani. So they have their own IT network, like the CRM system, the billing system, uh, all that is into IT network. Now, it is also required that some data should also flow from this industrial control system, the power system, into IT network. So, for example, where is the fault? So, in case there is an outage of electricity, the outage where it has happened, the where the break in the wire or the cable has happened, that information is captured by fault management system of OT network. Now that has to flow into the contact center of IT, so that Adani group, anybody contact center people start calling that there is no electricity in their area. The contact center agent should be able to say, okay, there is a problem, for example, in Goregaon area. Okay, so there's a cable fault over there, and it is the fault is uh, it will take about 3 hours to fix that. So that type of information also has to flow from this electricity network, OT network, into the contact center, so that the agents are equipped with the information and they can provide the right information to the people who are calling into this contact center. While this data diode ensures that only the information flows from left to right and not from right to left. So diode's functionality is to allow flow of information in one way, because any malware which affects the IT network of Adani, that should not get propagated into the OT network, operational technology network of Adani, and that could have much more severe repercussion. So this is about integrating OT and IT network. So what are the common security hygiene at a personal level one should take? So not to use sensitive password like net banking password anywhere else. Okay. So one has to be sure that whatever password you are using is not, it has not been hacked. Okay. So there are certain sites which provides that based on your email address, which are the sites where your passwords have been leaked. So I have been pawned is one of the website where you can put in your email ID to identify any which are the websites on which your password has been hacked. Update your antivirus software regularly, running Windows update regularly, and be wary of whatever links which you get in your email, in your SMS, and be sure that you don't click it. So, coming to attack and protection, So there are two teams within an organization, a red team and blue team. So red team is a team which, besides doing vulnerability assessment and penetration testing, they also do some sort of a human being, the employee vulnerability assessment, whether how strong the awareness level is there of your employees or your contractors. So they try to access the security of your human beings. So, for example, many times what happens is that one of the tests which is performed is to see uh, whether any uh, information which is there, any laptop which is there in your organization, the data from that can be copied or not. So they come in some form of a person who's supplying tea or coffee, and in that garb they come and try to physically enter your corporate building and try to steal the data. So that type of exercises are being conducted. So besides technology, how strong is your physical security? Whether it is doing the due diligence or not, how strong are your employees? Whether they are looking out for any suspicious activity around them or not. That those type of teaming is known as red teaming. So besides technical assessment, they also do the human assessment and or the weakness of the processes. Blue teams are the teams which are there in the security operation centers. So they are the protectors. So red team are the attackers and blue team are the protectors who protect the organization and ensure that information is protected. So I have come to the end of my presentation. If there are any questions, do let me know. Meanwhile, I'll put a link to
We will have 10 minutes for question answers. Please type in your questions in chat box. What does OT stands for?
operation technology. So industrial control systems are also known as OT. So how do I get the chat window?
Can you please recommend any reliable antivirus software?
So actually, I don't promote any vendor, but McAfee, Sophos, all these are well-known brands.
One
So
more question. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yes, sir. There's one more question. Can you share website address where we can get know if our Gmail, Google passwords are used at either sites?
Yeah, yeah, I'm putting that. So this is a website where you can put your email ID. Just put your email ID, not the password, the email ID, as I mentioned, and you will be able to see the websites on which your password has been compromised. So what is
What is
the
the authority? Yeah.
yeah?
What is
um,
what is the authority taking care? FOT data center security norms.
So data security norms, there are various standards are there for data security. Sorry, for data center. One is the Uptime Institute, which ensures that the design, the build, and the operation of your data center complies with the best standards. So Uptime Institute is one such institute. And then uh, there is some sort of auditors who do the audit of data centers. So there is something known as Service Organization Controls, SOC. Service Service Organization Control report. So this is known as SOC report. So this SOC is different than Security Operations Center. So this is done by certain CPAs, Certified Public Accountant, which is the equivalent of CA in United States. They conduct the assessment and they provide service organization control report. So these are known as SOC report, which is separate than Security Operations Center, which is the setup where the log monitoring happens.
How to check the strength of the password I'm using? How much time it will take to break my password by using softwares?
So there are tools which are available to check it. So often, I think it is Kane and Abel. I will check it. So if the combination of alphabets and capital and in facial characters, it provides this, and you can use this tool. Just a minute, I'm looking for it. Kane and Abel. So this is one of the tools to recover the password, how strong it is. So if you have the hash of the password, then the password can be recovered or not, that you can find out. So any further questions?
On government level, who takes care of all data center security, or who monitors them?
So at the government level, there is nothing like it. It is at the RBI level, regulatory level. So RBI, because of financial transactions, they ensure that whatever security measures it is there, that banks are following or not. Similarly, SEBI does it, does it, uh, TRAI, Telecom Regulatory Authority of India does it for telecom sector. For different sectors, there are different regulators are there who ensures that the security norms and in general of the organization and of the data center is followed. Correct? That was the question, right?
Yes, yes, yes. Please elaborate for pen test.
Pen test is penetration testing. Uh, so first you assess the vulnerability by running vulnerability scanners like Nessus, Police Guard, Rapid 7. All these are scanners which are available to scan the network, and based on the vulnerability report, you can conduct the penetration testing. So penetration testing, as I said in the beginning only, it's a Kali Linux is one of the is the operating system specially optimized for attackers. So that is how one can start with Kali Linux, and then Metasploit is there, is a framework, and there are variety of other tools to conduct the penetration testing. So it could be Burp Suite is there, and then Fortify is there for application security. So it is a huge world of ethical hacking. So uh, once one gets into it, then one can get familiar with all these tools.
Whether there is a this one security approach for and premise systems and clouds, as whether they're same or is there any difference?
Pardon me.
So, security approach for an online systems, on-premise systems and clouds, whether they're same or they're different.
So on premise, because a lot of things have to be taken care, whether it is network or the servers, the server hardening, or the server room itself, physical and environmental. So all that has to be the responsibility of the users or the organization. While in cloud, many of the things are taken care by the cloud service provider, especially in the SaaS environment. So software as a service environment, a lot of things like server hardening and network hardening to that large extent is taken care by the service provider, and one has to ensure the security of the user data. So uh, SaaS is important, is more secured compared to others like IaaS, infrastructure as a service.
There is a request if details of these organizations, which gives us details of PW compromised or not, could be known to all.
Didn't get you.
No, no,
Can you repeat?
request if details of these organizations, which gives us details of PW compromised or not.
Password common. Yeah, so I sent it. So there is a website which I sent, and somebody asked uh, what is to be done. So if you put the email in that, then you will come to know the list of websites where it has been compromised. Tips that you can share for users for data security and avoid any compromise on data breach. So for the organization, always be aware of phishing. So phishing, never keep uh, any users, any laptop, any desktop with admin level access. So that is one of the way by which one can secure the organization. And whatever the admin passwords are there with the help desk, that also has to be secure, because what happens is that all the laptops within the organization, though the admin level access is not there for users, but when the help desk guy uh, takes control to provide service, they have the common password. So that password over a period of time, it gets leaked out. So it is no more into IT help desk, even the users get that password. So one has to take care, one has to use certain tools that even the help desk people don't know the password, it is auto generated. So there are tools which are available which provide this type of auto generated password.
As an end user, what precaution should I take when handling transactions using QR code at retail outlets?
Yeah. So QR code, if you are actually physically going over there, whether it is at the roadside vendor or whether it is in the malls or wherever, then one should go. That level of trust is there. But if somebody has sent the QR code remotely, if you have put something on OLX or you have put something for sale on some other website, quicker or all that, then somebody sends you the QR code. You don't know who the buyer is or who the seller is, and he sends you the QR code. So never scan the QR code which is sent remotely. It should always be when you have some level of trust. When in physical world, if you are going to the roadside vegetable vendor or fruit vendor, then it is because he is generally into this business, and you have that level of some trust. Then you can do it. And as a As a very good precaution, you should have one main bank where you keep your entire wealth, and there is another bank where you keep petty amounts. So uh, you keep transferring 5,000, 10,000 into that petty for petty payments, and you give the QR, you whatever Google Pay, GPay, and Phone Pay and all that you do through that bank. Don't do through your main bank account. So most of the users we know have two bank accounts. One should be used only for this petty payments, and one should be used for uh, your salary credits, your loan accounts, your EMI, your mutual fund payments. All that should be from the main account. So that segregation one has to maintain, so that you whatever in case of loss is only up to 5,000, 10,000, not beyond that.
Sir, you have shared the link for checking the
Yeah.
email ID test at portal. If it shows the breaches, what action should we take? And if it is the official email ID, whether that result should be shared with the office administrator.
I don't know. Maybe the person who has asked this question can be unmuted and he can ask directly. Hello.
Ah, yeah, 1 minute. I'll unmute him.
So the existing password, if it is pawned, then you should change it ideally, and you should use a stronger password, which is auto-generated by Chrome. That is a much more stronger password, and it's your net banking password. You should not save it anywhere, even in Chrome. You should be knowing it yourself.
Rajendra, you are
Hello, sir.
unmuted. You can.
Yes. Hello, sir. I just wanted to ask, like the URL that you had provided, if it shows on an official email ID, like the email ID of our company, which where we are working, and if the results shows some data breach issues over there, should we share that result with our office network administrators and security guys so that they can look into it and take some precaution, whether it's limited to only me or other or employees within the organization as well?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, maybe you can inform the information security officer of your organization that this is what the website is and where this has been compromised. So maybe you can look into this matter. And most of the organization, while doing the training and awareness, they say that if you see any suspicious activity, then you are requested to inform. So as a good employee, you should always inform your information security officer about this.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thanks. Any further questions? Hope I have answered all the questions. If somebody is not satisfied, he can unmute and ask.
One more question. Do you want us to change the existing password if it is pawned?
Yeah, ideally you should change it. And be, uh, God forbid, you may receive a mail from a hacker saying that this is your email address and this is the password, and to further control the damage, you are requested to transfer so many bitcoins, or I will damage your other accounts also. So this type of warning you may get. So just ignore that warning and don't do anything. And depending on the website where your password is compromised, if you feel if it is a critical website, then you should change it and change it to a stronger password. So RBI also is running various awareness campaign on the TV. So in the TV ads, we see RBI also has embarked on this people awareness campaign. So even banks have to, as per the mandate of RBI, they have to create awareness. So most of the banks are also creating awareness about what precaution one should take.
One question: what courses should we take to know more about cybersecurity?
So one should take up any of this. One of the course which I recommend is one from ISC Square. I will put it on this. There are some. So ISC Square is an international organization which is focused only on security. So it stands for International Information System Security Consortium. So one can start some basic courses over here. It is some basic courses are free of cost, and if somebody is more interested, they can get in touch. If it is possible, I'll try to get some vouchers for free courses. So maybe if you all are interested, you all can get in touch with me. I'll put my mail ID. So if there are no further questions, are there any further questions, Girish?
No questions. So thanks, Mr. Naushad Rajani, for this wonderful and knowledgeable session of cybersecurity. Let me share the certificate.
Yeah, thanks everyone for joining. It, especially on Sunday, it is always a challenge to join so early. So thanks for people who have made the efforts to join.
On behalf of PMI Mumbai chapter, I would like to present a certificate to you. Please accept this certificate as a token of appreciation for giving us your time and effort and having this knowledgeable session. You will be receiving the soft copy of certificate in mail.
Okay.
We have recorded this session and you will be able to see today's session in YouTube PMI MC channel in 2-3 days. You won't be able to claim PDUs for watching the recorded session, but for today's session you can claim PDUs. We will be sending mailers, and along with the mailer, we will be sending you the link for providing feedback. So please provide feedback also. Thank you all for joining today's session. Hope you have enjoyed. Have a good day. Thank you.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for participating. Thanks Girish and Ketan.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining.